Good evening. Welcome to part 5 of building a FlyFly F-86 Sabre, modifying. Well, I got a little work done over this weekend. As you can see, the halves are just about ready to be joined. I got the wiring inserted. This is the power line here. As you can see, I even got one of those red tags on the end, or red plugs. I like these. They're way better than the Dean's plug. Right here, you can see that I got some painter's tape covering the wires. Well, some guys have run into this, and I have too. When you epoxy the fuselage halves together, some of the epoxy will run off and adhere to the wires. And then if ever you have to change the wires or another problem come up, you're going to run into a bear trying to pull those glued in wires out. So with the painter's tape covering the wires, that protects it from being epoxied to the fuselage. That way, if ever I have to pull any wires out, it'll just rip the painter's tape. And the painter's tape will keep the epoxy off the wires. Works pretty good. As you can see, I got wires running through already. This right here is the rudder servo. I wanted to make sure I had that running through and pulled out. And this is going to be an empty cavern right here where that wire can set it. All the wires can set in. As you can see, I also got my elevator block glued in with CA right now, just so that I can, because I got alignment marks on here. I got them glued in right at the alignment marks. So when I put the halves together, I know that it will be in the right place, because we're going to epoxy all this. As you can see, I even got a metal clevis here to attach to that, and I got a zip tie to lock it in place. We want to try to keep this as maintenance free as possible. On the back half of the speed brakes, as you see this piece of purple here, that actually is a construction paper. I bought some construction paper from the drugstore for 99 cents. And instead of getting a piece of wood or something and glue it back there, adding extra weight, the construction paper seemed to work out much better. Here, I'm going to do this so you can see it. Let's see. See that? It's blue on that side, but I figure I can take some paint. And paint over that. But it's blue on the back side. But hey, it's light and it doesn't add weight and it does the job. So that works pretty good. You can see those speed brakes. I even painted them in there as well too. The inner half as well. So I'm just prepping for to put the fuselage halves together. One word of caution: dry fit everything. If you ever put anything together, dry fit everything first. I dry fitted this together, and I learned one thing about the thrust tube. The thrust tube is the same on both sides, and the fuselage is smaller on the tail end than it is where the EDF unit is. So I had to kind of cut a couple of relief slots in there so that when I put the fuselage halves together, it won't push it apart, because that thrust tube will actually bulge. So I cut a couple of release slots in there to help relieve it, so there won't be so much pressure against it when the fuselage halves are glued together. Now, as you can see, this half of the thrust tube is glued in place. Now, one thing I was worried about was the thrust tube doesn't fit exactly. The directions don't tell you this, but the thrust tube does not fit exactly to the EDF unit. So after looking it over some more and looking and fitting, I learned that it has like a little step down here that the EDF unit sits in, so that the thrust tube doesn't really touch the EDF unit. And this is the EDF unit that came with the kit. And so it sits in that little slot, that little step right here. It sits right into that step. And that's how that works. Whoop, let's turn it this way. Is that the right way? Yeah. It sits right into that step. But then looking at it again, because this is the EDF unit that I'm going to use. Right, that's a nice size motor. It's a 1800 kV motor. And it's just a smidge, if I compare the two, let's do it this way. It's just a smidge bigger. So I might have to, well, I am going to have to open up that step just a little bit. But that shouldn't be a problem. But that's how that's going to fit in there, just like so. So I don't think I'm going to run into a problem there. It's just a little shaving so that I can get the EDF unit to fit in there after I get the mounts in. And like I said, test fit everything and test everything before you put it all together. Because I learned one thing. One of my servos for the speed brakes actually fried. It burned out. This little sucker got hot. Fortunately, I bought about 20 of these at one time. So I got plenty to go around. But this is the first one that has went out on me. The very first one. I mean, it's not a bad. It's made by Turnigy. It's a TGY 90S steel gear 9-gram servo. And it's a good servo. They're strong for their size and they're steel gears. So they don't break on impact like some do. But this is the only one that has burned out on me so far. So I'm just going to use this for spare parts if ever I have another servo go out. So what we're going to do right now, I'm going to show you how to put these halves together. I've been thinking about it and thinking about it, and now I've finally come to it. Oh, one thing you want to do too that I found out, when you're running all your lines, mark them. I've already got this marked. Here's the elevator. There's the throttle. There's the rudder. So everything's marked and ready to be put together. So we're going to go ahead and put this together. Now, right now I just got this C8 in place. The C8 is just to hold it, which is okay. But we're going to use epoxy in this area because we want that to be strong. It's got to hold a lot. That elevator box is going to be pushing a lot of weight, so we want it to be strong, and we don't want it to collapse on us. So, but other than that, I've tested everything, and everything works. Everything's doing okay. So we're going to use some epoxy. I got some nice 30-minute epoxy. Even though the kit came with some nice glue. There's some foam-ready glue. But I like to use 30-minute epoxy. It's stronger, and I think it's all around better. And with 30-minute epoxy, it doesn't take us long. Let's see here. I just went and bought some a couple weeks ago. Some 30-minute slow cure 30-minute epoxy. But while cleaning up, I found a tube of this stuff. So I was like, well, this is 30-minute epoxy too. This is quicker and easier to use. So I'm going to go ahead and use this. Now what we're going to epoxy, we're going to run some epoxy across here. Like I said, I kind of fitted I thought I made a mistake with the thrust tube and I yanked it out while the glue was on it, but it still got a little bit of dotted glue on there. That's no problem. But we're going to go ahead and run some epoxy through here, show you how we put this EDF, the tail halves together. And like I said, the main problem was just this thrust tube. This one end was the tail is larger than the other, and it crushed the tube and was pushing the halves out. So we're all ready for that now. I already got those relief slots cut in there, so we don't have to worry about it. It won't affect the flow of the air that goes through there, and no one will ever even know those relief slots are there unless they decide to look up the tail end of your plane. So we're going to go ahead and mix some epoxy. I'll make a nice bit here, because we're going to have quite a bit to epoxy. Now, one thing I like to use are these. These are abundant at fast food places like McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King. They give them to you, and then you never use them. But I found a good use for them, and sometime if I'm there, even though my dietitian hates it when I go to places like that, fast food places, so I get a salad or so forth. But I grab either the spoons or the knives, a couple of them. That way I can keep plenty of them here in the shop because they're good for mixing. And if ever you have to move some epoxy somewhere, you got a nice spoon to do it with. So let's see here. That's mixed up pretty good. And we're going to put some down here where the thrust tube is, and it also works good in spreading the epoxy as well too. So let's see here. I'll spread that. Get the thrust tube taken care of real quick. Run that. There we go. Makes a good spreader. Look at that. And with that tube, it dispenses real quick too. So, like I said, I got 30 minutes to work with. But if I need more, I can easily grab some more and squirt it out the tube. I know everyone has their own technique in doing this. But it never hurts to listen to how other people do theirs, because you never know what you can learn. I've learned a lot from watching other guys on YouTube do this. And everybody has their own way of doing it, but you know what? Like I said, look to see what way you like works best for you. Alright, now getting back to this. There's a little cavern right there. Now this is where I didn't want, that painter's tape keeps that epoxy from sticking to the wires. Alright, went through that pretty quick. Give it a good mixing. Okay, now let's see. Put a little bit right there. The wires are protected from any epoxy. You need that to go into there. The spoon just scoops it right into where you need it. Like I said, there's going to be some excess. No matter what you do, there's going to be excess. So it's best to be prepared for it. Even though it's 30-minute epoxy, I'm still going to work a little fast here. Already been scoped out what I want to be epoxied and everything that needs to be. So I'm not trying to figure out what to glue as I go along. See, I even got my wires for my ESC to run right there, the throttle line and the power line for the ESC. That's all set. Got this little trench right there if we need to get some epoxy in. Boy, that spoon works good. Oops, a little bit on my hand. That's okay. I'm having a lot of fun building this plane. It's not coming along as fast as I wanted it to because I'm doing all these modifications and so forth. But still, it's a lot of fun. And I enjoy sharing it with other people. Kind of gives me a chance to show off a bit. So if you want to call me a show off, yeah, go right ahead. I like to show off. I think everybody likes to show off from time to time. When they can really do something good, they get them a chance to show off their skills.